I stood there in the middle of our dining room, surrounded by the soft glow of candles and the hum of chatter from our guests, thinking this was it. This was what a good life felt like. My name's Jackson Reed, and it was our first wedding anniversary with Brielle, the woman I'd sworn my heart to a year ago. The house smelled like roasted chicken and wine, and I was proud, you know? I'd worked hard to make this night special. Friends and neighbors filled the room, their laughter bouncing off the walls I'd painted myself. I caught Brielle's eye across the table, her smile tight but beautiful, and I thought everything was perfect. Then her mother, Estelle Carrington, stood up. She's this tall, thin woman with a voice like a whip and a stare that could cut glass. She raised her arm, showing off her bare wrist, and the room went quiet. "Where's my watch, Jackson?" she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I blinked, confused. She was talking about her gold watch, some fancy thing worth $15,000 she always bragged about. Before I could even open my mouth, she pointed at me and said, "You took it." "I know you did." My stomach dropped. I looked at Brielle, waiting for her to laugh it off, to tell her mom to sit down. But instead, Brielle's face hardened. "Give it back, Jackson," she said, her voice cold as ice. I couldn't believe it. "I didn't take anything," I said, my hands up, palms open, like I could prove it right there. The guests stared, forks frozen halfway to their mouths. I kept looking at Brielle, begging her with my eyes to trust me, but she didn't. She stepped closer, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor I'd sanded myself, and then crack. Her hand hit my face so hard I stumbled back, crashing into the table. Plates rattled, wine spilled, and I hit the ground. My cheek burned, and I tasted blood in my mouth. The room was dead silent now, everyone watching me like I was some kind of animal. I touched my lip, saw the red on my fingers, and looked up at Brielle. Her face wasn't sorry, it was furious. "You're a thief," she spat. I tried to stand, to say something, anything, but then I heard Estelle's voice again. "Call the police," she said, calm as if she was ordering coffee. I scrambled to my feet, my head spinning, my heart pounding. "I didn't do it," I said, louder this time, looking around at the faces, friends, neighbors, people I'd known for years. No one moved. No one said a word. Then I saw the flashing lights outside, red and blue cutting through the curtains. 2 officers walked in, their boots heavy on the floor, and Brielle pointed at me. "That's him," she said. "He stole it." I tried to explain, but they didn't listen. One grabbed my arm, twisted it behind my back, and the cuffs clicked shut. The cold metal bit into my wrists as they dragged me out. I looked back at Brielle one last time, her arms crossed, her mother smirking beside her, and the guests just staring. My own house, my own wife, my own life, and it was all slipping away. They shoved me into the patrol car, and as the door slammed, I felt the sting of that slap all over again. Not just on my face, but in my chest. How did it come to this? How did the woman I loved turn on me so fast? The car pulled away, and I sat there, blood on my tongue, humiliation sinking into my bones, wondering what I'd done to deserve this. But I hadn't done anything. I knew that much. And as the lights of my home faded behind me, I swore I'd figure out what was really going on. Because this wasn't just a slap. This was the night everything I'd built shattered, and I wasn't going to let it end like this. The patrol car smelled like sweat and old coffee, and I sat there in the back, my hands twisted up in those cuffs, feeling the ache in my face spread down to my jaw. My name's Jackson Reed, and I still couldn't wrap my head around it. How I went from cutting anniversary cake to being hauled off like some lowlife. The lights from the street flashed across the window, and every bump in the road jolted my bruised cheek. I kept replaying it, Brielle's hand swinging, the crack against my skin, her voice calling me a thief. My own wife. The officers up front didn't say much, just mumbled into their radio about a domestic incident and possible theft. I wanted to yell, to tell them I didn't take Estelle's stupid watch, but my throat was tight, like someone had their hands around it. We pulled into the station, and they yanked me out, marching me through a buzzing door into a place that stank of bleach and despair. The lights were too bright, and my head pounded as they shoved me into a chair. "Empty your pockets," one of them said, a big guy with a mustache. I did what he said, keys, wallet, a crumpled receipt from the grocery store where I bought the damn chicken for the party. They took it all, bagged it up, and then came the fingerprints. They pressed my hands onto this cold machine, ink smearing across my fingers, and I felt dirty, like I'd actually done something wrong. Next was the mugshot. "Look at the camera," the other cop barked. I stared ahead, my lips swollen, my eyes burning, and the flash went off. I didn't even recognize myself in that moment. Jackson Reed, The guy who fixed roofs and mowed lawns for extra cash, now some criminal in a photo. They pushed me into an interrogation room after that, a gray box with a table and 2 chairs. A woman in a cheap suit walked in, her badge glinting under the fluorescent light. "So," she said, sitting down, "where's the watch?" I leaned forward, my cuffs clanking against the table. "I didn't take it," I said, my voice hoarse but steady. "I don't know where it is. I don't even care about it. I wouldn't steal from anyone, especially not my wife's mother." She smirked like she'd heard that line a million times. "Your wife says different. Her mom says different. You got anyone who says you didn't do it?" I opened my mouth, thinking of the guests, the neighbors, but then I stopped. They'd all just watched. No one spoke up. No one helped. I shook my head, and she scribbled something on her notepad. They searched me again, tore through my coat, my phone, even the lining of my jeans. Nothing, because there was nothing to find. Hours dragged by, the clock on the wall ticking louder than it should have. My ribs hurt from where I'd hit the table, and my mind kept spinning. How could Brielle do this? How could she look at me, after everything we'd been through, and believe I'd steal? I thought about our wedding, her laugh when I tripped over my vows, the way she'd curl into me at night. Was that all fake? Finally, the door opened again. The big cop came back. "You're free to go," he said, unlocking the cuffs. "No evidence. No watch. But don't leave town." I rubbed my wrists, the red marks stinging, and stood up. "That's it?" I asked. He shrugged. "For now." I grabbed my stuff and walked out into the cold night, my breath puffing in the air. I headed toward home, my home. But when I got there, my key didn't work. I jiggled it, pushed harder, but the lock wouldn't budge. I banged on the door, called out for Brielle, but the lights were off, and no one answered. That's when I saw it. A new deadbolt, shiny and mocking me. They'd changed the locks. My own house, and I was locked out. I stood there, my face throbbing, my hands shaking, realizing love didn't just turn into humiliation, it turned into nothing. I was alone, with nowhere to go, and the weight of it all crashed down on me. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I ended up at the Briarwood Inn that night, a beat-up motel off the highway where the sign flickered and the parking lot smelled like diesel. My name's Jackson Reed, and I was still reeling from the cuffs, the slap, the locked door of my own damn house. I handed over my last $20 to the clerk, a guy with tired eyes who didn't ask questions, and he slid me a key for room 6B. The door creaked when I pushed it open, and the air inside hit me with a mix of mold and stale cigarettes. The walls were stained yellow, the carpet was sticky under my boots, and a single light buzzed overhead like it was about to give up. I didn't care. I dropped my wallet and keys on a wobbly table, then collapsed onto the bed. The mattress sagged under me, springs poking into my back, but I barely felt it. My ribs ached from where I'd hit the dining table, and my face still stung from Brielle's hand. I lay there, staring at the cracked ceiling, trying to piece it all together. How did I get here? A year ago, I was saying I do to Brielle, promising her everything I had. Now I was in a dump like this, locked out of my life. I rolled onto my side, wincing as the pain shot through me, and that's when it hit me harder. The house wasn't mine anymore. I'd found out earlier that day, when I'd called a buddy who worked at the county office to check. He'd pulled the records and told me the truth. The deed had been signed over to Brielle, quiet as a whisper, a few months back. I'd been so busy loving her, working extra shifts to fix up that place, that I didn't see it. She'd used our marriage like a tool, a way to take what was mine. And Estelle? That woman was the brains behind it. I could still hear her voice from the party, sharp and smug, calling me a thief. She'd always looked down on me, called me the handyman, like it was an insult, even though I'd built half that house with my own sweat. I sat up, my head pounding, and grabbed my phone. No messages. No calls. Just silence from the woman who'd promised to stand by me. I scrolled through old texts anyway, looking for anything that might have warned me. There was nothing obvious, just little things that seemed off now. Her asking about my grandfather's inheritance, pushing me to sign papers I didn't read close enough. I trusted her, loved her, and she'd been planning this the whole time. I tossed the phone onto the bed and rubbed my hands over my face, feeling the bruise on my cheek. The betrayal wasn't just the slap or the arrest, it was deeper, colder. They'd calculated every move, her and Estelle, like I was some pawn they could toss aside. I stood up, pacing the small room, my boots thudding against the floor. The walls felt like they were closing in, but I wouldn't let them crush me. I stopped by the window, peering out at the dark parking lot, the faint glow of a streetlight cutting through the night. I thought about my grandfather, the man who'd left me that house and a little cash to start my life. He'd always said, "Hold your ground, Jackson. No one can take what's yours unless you let them." Well, I'd let them. I'd been blind, but not anymore. I turned back to the bed and sat down, my hands clenching into fists. The pain in my body was nothing compared to the fire starting in my chest. They thought they'd won, Brielle with her new locks, Estelle with her smug grin. They thought I'd just fade away, some broke nobody from the wrong side of town. But I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I'd fight. I didn't know how yet, didn't have a plan, but I knew one thing. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I lay back down, the buzzing light above me like a heartbeat, and I made a promise to myself. They'd taken my house, my wife, my dignity, but they wouldn't take my spine. I'd get it all back, piece by piece, no matter what it took. I woke up in that dingy motel room with my ribs screaming and my head heavy, but I wasn't staying there feeling sorry for myself. My name's Jackson Reed, and I'd had enough of being kicked around. The sun was barely up, leaking through the torn curtains of room 6B, and I pulled on my boots, grabbed my wallet, and headed out. The air outside was cold, biting at my bruised face, but it woke me up. I walked across town, my breath puffing in front of me, straight to the police station. Not as a suspect this time, no cuffs, no shame. But as a man who wanted answers. I wasn't letting Brielle and Estelle bury me without a fight. The station was quieter in the morning, just a few cops shuffling papers behind the desk. I told the guy at the counter I needed to talk to someone about what happened, and he pointed me to an office down the hall. That's where I met Detective Sienna Ward. She was sitting at a desk cluttered with files, a cup of black coffee steaming in her hand. She looked about 40, with short dark hair and eyes that didn't miss a thing. "You're the watch guy," she said, not even looking up from her paperwork. I stood there, hands in my pockets, and nodded. "Yeah, but I didn't take it. And I'm not here to talk about that part. I'm here because my wife and her mom set me up, and they stole my house." That got her attention. She put the pen down, leaned back in her chair, and waved me to sit. "Start from the beginning," she said. So I did. I told her everything, how it was our anniversary, how Estelle accused me in front of everyone, how Brielle slapped me and called the cops. I told her about the locks being changed, about the house being signed over without me knowing. My voice shook a little, not from fear but from anger, and I kept going. How Estelle always hated me, how Brielle changed after the wedding, how I'd been too dumb to see it. Sienna didn't interrupt. She just sipped her coffee and listened, her face calm but her eyes sharp, like she was already piecing it together. When I finished, she set the cup down and looked at me straight. "You're saying they framed you to get your property?" she asked. I nodded. "And more. I had some money from my grandfather, nothing huge, but enough. I think they took that too." She tapped her fingers on the desk, thinking. "That's a big accusation, Jackson. You got anything to back it up?" I shrugged, feeling small for a second. "Not yet. Just what I know in my gut. And the deed, they switched it to her name. My buddy at the county office told me." Sienna leaned forward now, her voice low but firm. "That's a start, but we need proof. Here's the thing. People like them, rich, connected, obsessed with looking perfect, they think they're clever. But clever people leave trails. Sloppy ones, if you know where to look." I felt a spark in my chest, like maybe I wasn't alone in this anymore. "You believe me?" I asked. She gave a small smirk. "I don't believe anyone until I see the evidence. But I've seen enough liars to know when someone's desperate for the truth. You're not here begging for pity. You're here asking for justice. That's different." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "So what do we do?" I said. She stood up, grabbed her coat off the chair. "We start digging. You get me anything you can, papers, bank stuff, whatever you've got from that house or your marriage. I'll pull some strings, see what's on file. If they're playing dirty, we'll find it." I nodded, my hands unclenching for the first time in days. "Thanks," I said, and I meant it. She just shrugged. "Don't thank me yet. This ain't gonna be easy. They've got money, and money buys silence. But I don't like bullies, Jackson. And I really don't like people who think they can slap a man down and walk away clean." She headed for the door, and I followed, feeling lighter than I had since that night. Sienna Ward wasn't just a cop, she was a fighter. And now, maybe, I had someone in my corner. For the first time, I thought I might actually get my life back. I left the station with Detective Sienna Ward's words rattling around in my head, and for the first time in days, I felt like I had a grip on something. Hope. Maybe. My name's Jackson Reed, and I wasn't about to let Brielle and Estelle walk all over me anymore. The sun was higher now, warming the air as I trudged back to the Briarwood Inn, my boots kicking up dust on the sidewalk. Sienna had told me to dig up anything I could, papers, bank records, whatever might show what they'd done. I didn't have much, locked out of my own house, but I wasn't starting from nothing. Back in room 6B, I sat on the sagging bed and pulled out my phone, scrolling through old emails and texts. My hand shook a little, not from fear but from the rush of finally doing something. Sienna was right, clever people leave trails, and I was ready to find them. I started with the bank app, logging in to check my account. It was almost empty. A couple $100 left, when there should have been thousands, my grandfather's inheritance, the last bit I'd been saving. I scrolled through the transactions, my stomach twisting as I saw it. Withdrawals I didn't make, transfers to some account I didn't recognize. Big chunks labeled home repairs and maintenance, but I'd done all the fixing myself, new roof, patched walls, everything. I hadn't hired anyone. I took screenshots of it all, my heart pounding. This was something. This was proof. I sent them to Sienna with a quick message. Found this. Money's gone. I didn't spend it. Then I kept digging. I remembered Brielle asking me to sign some papers a few months back, saying it was for tax stuff. I'd been tired, just off a long shift, and I'd trusted her. Dumb move. I didn't have those papers now, but I had emails. I searched her name in my inbox and found one from her, short and sweet. Hey, sign the trust docs. All set. Trust docs? What trust? I forwarded that to Sienna too, my chest tightening. Later that day, she called me. Good work, Jackson, she said, her voice steady through the crackling line. That trust email's a lead. I pulled some records. Brielle opened a private trust right after your wedding. Your money's been funneled into it, disguised as expenses. And guess who's listed as co-manager? Estelle Carrington. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. They planned this, I said, almost whispering it. From the start? Sienna didn't sugarcoat it. Looks that way. I found more. Emails between them, forwarded to a dummy account they didn't hide well. One's a gem, Estelle wrote. If he resists, humiliate him publicly. Frame him. He'll crumble. Sound familiar? I froze, the words sinking in. That night, the watch, the slap, the cops, it wasn't just some spur-of-the-moment fight. It was a plan. Yeah, I said, my voice rough. That's exactly what they did. Sienna kept going. They forged your signature on the house transfer too. I've got a guy at the bank pulling statements, and we're cross-checking dates. This isn't just fraud, Jackson. It's a hit job. I stood up, pacing the small room, the buzzing light overhead matching the buzz in my head. What now? I asked. We build the case, she said. You've got texts, voicemails, anything else? I thought fast. Yeah, I've got some voicemails from Brielle, little stuff, but maybe something's there. I'd saved them, mostly because I used to like hearing her voice. Send them over, Sienna said. Every bit helps. I spent the next hour going through my phone, finding every scrap I could. Texts where Brielle asked about my accounts. Voicemails where she sounded too sweet, too pushy. I sent it all to Sienna, my hand steady now. This wasn't just about me being mad anymore. It was about showing who they really were. By night, Sienna called again. We've got enough to start, she said. The trust, the forgeries, those emails. It's a trail of greed, Jackson. They thought you'd break, but you didn't. You're giving me what I need to nail them. I sat on the bed, staring at the moldy wall, feeling something shift inside me. I'm not crumbling, I said. Not anymore. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. Good. Keep it that way. We're just getting started. I hung up, my mind racing but clear. They'd tried to ruin me, but I was still standing. And with Sienna on my side, I wasn't just fighting back. I was winning. I woke up in room 6B with a stiffness in my neck and a fire in my gut, ready to take the next step. My name's Jackson Reed, and after weeks of feeling like a punching bag, I finally had something solid to swing back with. Detective Sienna Ward had called me early, her voice sharp through the phone. We're filing an emergency injunction today, she said. It'll freeze the house and any accounts they've touched. They won't be able to sell or move a dime until we sort this out. I sat up on the creaky bed, the words sinking in. You mean I might get my house back? I asked, rubbing sleep from my eyes. Not yet, she said, but it's a start. They've been sloppy, Jackson. We're locking them down before they can run. I got dressed quick, pulling on my jeans and a faded jacket, feeling lighter than I had since that slap knocked me to the floor. I met Sienna at the courthouse, a big gray building that smelled like paper and wax. She was waiting outside, her coat flapping in the wind, a stack of papers in her hand. "You ready for this?" she asked, eyeing me like she was checking if I'd crack. I nodded. "Yeah, let's do it." Inside, we filed the injunction with a clerk who stamped it like it was nothing, but to me, it was everything. It meant Brielle and Estelle couldn't touch what they'd stolen. Not yet. For the first time, I felt like I was breathing again, like the weight on my chest had lifted just a little. Back at the motel, I settled into a kind of routine. The place was still a dump, moldy walls, buzzing light, but it didn't feel so suffocating anymore. That's when Mr. Booker, the old guy who ran the front desk, started showing up. He was a retired teacher, maybe 70, with gray hair and a slow walk. One night, he knocked on my door, holding a paper plate with a ham sandwich. "Thought you could use this," he said, his voice gravelly but kind. I took it surprised. "Thanks," I said, and he just nodded, stepping inside. He saw the mess, my phone, papers I'd scribbled notes on, and didn't ask much. "Rough stretch, huh?" he said. I chewed the sandwich, the bread soft and the ham salty, and shrugged. "Yeah, wife and her mom took everything. Framed me. But I'm fighting back." He sat in the wobbly chair by the table, looking at me like he'd seen 100 kids like me in his classroom. "Good," he said. "Don't let their money blind you from your own worth, son. You're more than what they took." His words hit me hard, simple but true. I swallowed, nodding. "I'm trying." After that, Booker became a quiet part of my days. He'd bring food sometimes, sandwiches, a thermos of soup, and once he dragged in an old record player with some jazz vinyls. "Helps the nerves," he said, setting it up. The music filled the room, smooth and low, and I'd sit there, letting it wash over me, feeling less alone. Sienna, though, she was the real anchor. She'd call or stop by, updating me on the case. One evening, she showed up with a folder under her arm, her face serious but alive. "We've got more," she said, sitting on the bed while I leaned against the wall. "Bank records match your screenshots. The trust's a gold mine. Your inheritance, funneled straight to Brielle, with Estelle pulling strings. We're building something tight." I crossed my arms, the jazz humming in the background. "What's next?" I asked. She looked at me, her eyes steady. "We keep pushing. DA's interested now, fraud's just the start. They're looking at theft, maybe worse. But you've got to keep standing, Jackson. They'll fight dirty when they realize we're closing in." I thought about that night, Brielle's hand, Estelle's smirk, the cuffs, and felt my jaw tighten. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. Sienna smirked, standing up. "Good. We're going to take them down, Jackson. Not just for the house, for you." She left, and I sat there with Booker's jazz playing, the sandwich plate empty beside me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. With Sienna's fire and Booker's quiet strength, I had people in my corner. The injunction was just the beginning. I was still here, still fighting, and I'd keep standing until I got it all back. I woke up to the sound of rain tapping on the motel window, a steady drum that matched the pulse in my chest. My name's Jackson Reed, and things were moving now, really moving. Detective Sienna Ward had called me late the night before, her voice buzzing with something I hadn't heard before, excitement. "We've got a break," she said. Estelle tried to push the house sale through a fake shell identity, but I flagged it. "It's frozen, and the DA's all over it." I sat up in the dark, the jazz record spinning quiet on Booker's player, and felt a grin tug at my bruised face. "You're kidding," I said. She wasn't. By morning, I was back at the station, standing in Sienna's cramped office while she spread papers across her desk like a map to my life. The rain streaked the window behind her, but inside, it was all heat and focus. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a document with a name I didn't know, some company called Carrington Holdings. "It's a front," she explained. Estelle set it up to flip the house quick, but she didn't cover her tracks. Bank tied it to her personal account. Sloppy. I leaned over, my hands on the desk, staring at the numbers and signatures. "So they can't sell it?" I asked. Sienna shook her head. "Not a chance. Injunction's holding, and this just made it stronger." I straightened up, feeling taller than I had in weeks. The house, my house, was still mine, at least for now. Sienna kept going, flipping through more pages. DA's office is building the case, fraud, identity falsification, property theft, and emotional abuse, Jackson. That slap? The public setup? It's part of it. They wanted to break you. I nodded, my jaw tight. They almost did, I said, thinking of that night, the blood in my mouth, the silence of the guests. She looked at me, her eyes steady. Almost doesn't count. You're here. That's what matters. I left the station with my head high, the rain soaking my jacket as I walked back to the motel. My ribs still ached, but it was nothing compared to the fight I felt inside. Back in room 6B, I kicked off my wet boots and sat on the bed, letting Booker's latest jazz record fill the air. He dropped it off that morning with a thermos of coffee, saying, "Rainy days need music." He was right. The saxophone wailed low and smooth, and I sipped the coffee, thinking about what was coming. Sienna had warned me the DA would want me to testify, to stand up in court and tell the whole ugly story. I wasn't scared of that. I'd been the guy they thought they could crush, the poor husband, the nobody from the wrong side of town. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I was the man walking into that courtroom, not to beg, not to grovel, but to show them I'd survived. Later that day, Sienna called again. "DA's adding charges," she said. "We've got digital trails now, emails, texts, even a bank login from Estelle's IP address. They're cooked, Jackson." I stood by the window, watching the rain pool in the parking lot. "When's the trial?" I asked. "Soon," she said. "Weeks, maybe. You ready to face them?" I thought about Brielle's cold eyes, Estelle's smirk, the way they'd laughed behind my back. "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready." She paused, then added, "You're doing good, Jackson. Most people would have folded. You didn't." I hung up, the rain still falling, and felt something solid settle in me. I wasn't just waiting anymore. I was building. That night, Booker stopped by with a plate of cornbread, still warm from his oven. "Heard you're taking on the big shots," he said, sitting in the chair. I nodded, breaking off a piece. "Trying to. They took everything, house, money, my name. But I'm getting it back." He smiled, slow and knowing. "You already got your name, son. Rest'll follow." I chewed the cornbread, sweet and crumbly, and let that sink in. He was right. The trial was coming, and I'd be there, not as the broken man they'd left on the dining room floor, but as the one who'd climbed back up. Sienna's evidence, the DA's charges, my own words, they were the web closing in. And I wasn't just exposing them. I was taking my life back, one truth at a time. I stood outside the courthouse that morning, the air crisp and the sky clear, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. My name's Jackson Reed, and today was the start of the trial, the reckoning I'd been waiting for. My boots hit the steps hard as I walked up, Sienna Ward beside me, her coat buttoned tight and her face set like stone. "You good?" she asked, glancing at me. I nodded, my hands flexing at my sides. "Yeah, let's get this done." Inside, the courtroom smelled like wood polish and tension. I took my seat behind the DA's table, my heart thudding but steady. Across the room, there they were, Estelle and Brielle. Estelle sat straight, her pearls gleaming, her lips a thin line of smugness. Brielle looked polished, her hair perfect, but her eyes darted around like a trapped animal. I stared at them, the woman I'd loved and the mother-in-law who'd hated me, and felt nothing but resolve. The judge banged the gavel, and it started. Sienna went first, taking the stand with that calm, fierce way she had. She laid it out, dates, documents, the trust they'd set up to siphon my money. "Mr. Reed was targeted," she said, her voice cutting through the room. "A calculated effort to strip him of his assets and reputation, executed by his wife and her mother." She stepped down, giving me a nod, and I felt stronger just from that. Then the DA, Jordan Fells, stood up. He was a wiry guy with glasses, but his words were heavy. He walked the jury through it like a story, my inheritance disappearing into fake expenses, the house transfer with my forged signature, the emails plotting to frame me. "This wasn't a misunderstanding," he said, pointing at Brielle and Estelle. "This was theft, fraud, abuse." The jury leaned in, 12 faces I didn't know but hoped would see the truth. When it was my turn, I stood up, my legs steady as I walked to the stand. The room went quiet, every eye on me, Brielle's, Estelle's, the judge's. I swore the oath, my voice clear, and then I started. "My name's Jackson Reed," I said, looking at the jury. "A year ago, I thought I'd married a partner. I was wrong. I married a predator." I told them everything, the anniversary party, Estelle's accusation, Brielle's slap that sent me crashing down. "She didn't just hit me," I said. "She called the cops, had me arrested, locked me out of my own house. All while they were stealing it from me." My hands gripped the stand, but I kept going. "I didn't take that watch. I didn't take anything. They took from me my home, my money, my trust. But I didn't break. I rebuilt. I glanced at Brielle then, saw her shift in her seat, her face pale. Estelle just stared, cold as ever. I finished strong. I'm here because I want what's mine, and I want them to face what they did. I stepped down, my chest tight but my head high, and sat back beside Sienna. She leaned over, whispering, "You nailed it." I hoped she was right. Then came the big moment. Jordan Fell stood up again, holding a small recorder. "We have one more piece of evidence," he said. He pressed play, and Estelle's voice filled the room, sharp and laughing. "He's too dumb to fight back," she said, clear as day. "The watch thing was perfect. Humiliate him, and he'll fold." Brielle's giggle followed, light and cruel. "Yeah, he's done." The courtroom went silent, a thick, heavy quiet. The jury shifted, some frowning, some shaking their heads. I looked at Sienna, saw her smirk, and felt it, the tide turning. Estelle's face twitched, her smugness cracking. Brielle stared at the floor, her hands clenched. Jordan turned to the jury. "That's who they are," he said. "Not victims, not innocents. Predators, like Mr. Reed said." The day ended there, the judge calling a recess, but I walked out feeling different. Not just a man who'd been slapped and framed, but one who'd stood up and spoken. Sienna clapped me on the shoulder as we hit the steps outside. "They're scrambling now," she said. "You showed them you're not dumb. Jackson, you're dangerous." I nodded, the sun warm on my face. The trial wasn't over, but I'd faced them, looked them in the eye, and told the truth. And that recording? It was the knife in their plan. I wasn't folding. I was fighting. I sat in the courtroom the next day, my hands resting on my knees, feeling the hum of anticipation in my bones. My name's Jackson Reed, and this was it, the end of the line for Brielle and Estelle. The trial had stretched over days, each one peeling back more of their lies. But today was the verdict. The air felt thick, like everyone was holding their breath. Sienna Ward sat beside me, her coffee cup empty on the table, her eyes fixed on the jury door. "You did your part," she said quietly. "Now it's up to them." I nodded, my throat tight, but I wasn't nervous, not anymore. I'd said my piece, faced them down, and the truth was out there. Whatever happened now, I'd fought for it. The judge came in, his robe rustling as he settled at the bench, and then the jury filed back. 12 people, ordinary folks with tired faces, carrying the weight of my life in their hands. The foreman stood, a short guy with glasses, holding a paper that shook just a little. The judge asked, "Have you reached a verdict?" He said, "Yes, Your Honor," and my heart kicked up a notch. I glanced across the room. Estelle still sat rigid, her pearls catching the light, but her jaw was tight. Brielle looked smaller, her hands twisting in her lap, her polish fading. The foreman started reading. "On the charge of fraud, we find the defendants, Estelle Carrington and Brielle Reed, guilty." The word hit me like a punch, but a good one, sharp and clean. He kept going. "On the charge of identity falsification, guilty. On the charge of property theft, guilty. On the charge of emotional abuse, guilty." Every "guilty" landed harder, building something inside me I hadn't felt in months. Relief, maybe, or justice. The courtroom stayed quiet, but I could feel it shift, like the air itself was heavier on their side now. The judge nodded, his face blank, and turned to Estelle and Brielle. "Sentencing," he said. "Estelle Carrington, 11 years. Brielle Reed, 9 years. All assets frozen, to be returned to the plaintiff, Jackson Reed, including the property and stolen funds, with interest. 11 years. 9 years." The numbers echoed in my head as the gavel came down, a loud crack that sealed it. I watched as the bailiff moved toward them, cuffs in hand. Estelle stood first, her chin up but her eyes dark, no smugness left. Brielle followed, her head bowed, her shoulders shaking. They didn't look at me, not once, as the metal clicked around their wrists. No apologies, no words, just the shuffle of their feet as they were led away. I sat there, letting it sink in. Guilty. On all counts. My house, my money, my name. They couldn't take them anymore. Sienna leaned over, her voice low. "You did this, Jackson. You stood up, and they fell." I turned to her, seeing that flicker of pride in her eyes, and nodded. "We did it," I said, because she'd been there every step, pulling the threads I couldn't reach. She smirked. "Yeah, but you carried it." The courtroom emptied out slow, the DA shaking my hand, the jury filing past with small nods. I walked outside with Sienna, the sun bright and the air cold against my face. "What now?" she asked, stopping on the steps. I looked out at the street, the town I'd lived in my whole life, and felt something settle. "I go home," I said. "Start over." She nodded, like she knew that was enough. "You earned it." I drove back to the motel that afternoon, the key to my house waiting at the county office, ready to pick up. Room 6B felt smaller now, the moldy walls and buzzing light just a pit stop I was leaving behind. Booker was at the desk when I checked out, his slow smile breaking through. "Heard you won, son," he said, handing me a paper bag with cornbread inside. "Knew you had it in you." I took it, the warmth seeping through, and grinned. "Thanks, Mr. Booker. For everything." He waved me off. "Go live your life." I walked to my truck, the weight of the trial lifting with every step. They tried to break me, slapped me, framed me, locked me out, but they couldn't. I'd faced them, watched them fall, and now I was free. Not just from them, but from the shame they'd piled on me. I wasn't weak. I was relentless. And I was going home. I pulled up to the house that afternoon, the key in my hand feeling heavier than it should have. My name's Jackson Reed, and after everything, the slap, the cuffs, the trial, I was finally back where I belonged. The place looked the same on the outside. White siding I'd painted 2 summers ago, the porch I'd built with my own hands, the mailbox with Reed still stenciled on it. But it wasn't the same, not really. Brielle and Estelle had tainted it, turned it into a battlefield. Now it was mine again, and I was here to make it something new. I unlocked the door, the new deadbolt clicking open smooth, and stepped inside. The air was stale, dust floating in the sunlight streaming through the windows. Their stuff was gone. Clothes, jewelry, all the fancy junk Estelle loved. But my things were still here. The old couch I'd patched up, the coffee table I'd sanded down. I dropped my bag from the motel on the floor and just stood there, breathing it in. This was home, and they couldn't take it from me anymore. I didn't waste time. I grabbed a bucket and some paint from the garage, stuff I'd bought before everything went bad, and started on the walls. The dining room first, where it all fell apart. I rolled over the soft beige Brielle had picked with a clean, bright white, covering every memory of that night. The slap, the blood, the silence, it faded under each stroke. I worked all day, sweat dripping down my back, my ribs aching but not stopping me. By night, the room looked different, fresh, like a new start. Next, I went outside. My grandfather used to love gardens, and I'd always meant to plant one for him. I grabbed a shovel and some seeds I'd picked up on the way, marigolds, his favorite, and dug into the dirt by the porch. The soil was hard, packed tight, but I kept at it, my hands blistering. I planted the seeds in neat rows, watering them with a rusty can I found in the shed. It wasn't much, but it felt right, like he was here, nodding at me, proud I'd held my ground. A few days later, I set up shop in the garage. Carpentry had always been my thing, fixing things, building things, and I figured it was time to turn it into more. I dragged out my tools, dusted off the workbench, and started small, a chair, simple but sturdy. Word got around quick. Mr. Booker was my first client, hobbling over with a grin. "Need a stool for the desk," he said, handing me a 20. I built it that afternoon, though it smooth under my hands, and delivered it to the motel. "Perfect," he said, testing it out. "You're good, Jackson." That was the start. Neighbors came next, then folks from town. It wasn't big money, but it was mine, earned honest. Sienna checked in too, stopping by one evening with a knowing smirk. "House looks good," she said, leaning against the porch rail. I handed her a soda from the fridge, the first thing I'd stocked. "Getting there," I said. She sipped it, looking out at the garden. "You've got a good life now. Don't forget that." I nodded, the words sticking with me. She was right. I did. A couple weeks later, I threw a small dinner in the backyard. No fanfare, just a grill going, some chairs I'd made, and people who'd stood by me, Booker, a few neighbors, a guy from the hardware store who'd always been kind. The marigolds were sprouting, little green shoots poking up, and the air smelled like burgers and smoke. I raised a glass of lemonade, the group quieting down. "They tried to end my story," I said, my voice steady. "Brielle, Estelle, they framed me, slapped me, took everything. But all they did was give me a better beginning." Folks nodded, some smiled, and Booker clapped me on the back. We ate, talked, laughed, and it hit me. I wasn't alone anymore. I'd reclaimed this place, this life, on my own terms. Later, Washing dishes in the kitchen I'd fought for. I looked out at the dark yard and felt peace. I'd been discarded, humiliated, but I wasn't a victim. I was Jackson Reed, still here, still building, stronger than they'd ever know. And this was just the start.